From today's class onwards, we'll be starting with the third unit of our syllabus, which is databases in .NET, okay, especially with ASP.NET. So we are going to discuss three different technologies for databases. All right, the first one is going to be ADO.NET, and the second one is going to be language integrated query, and the third one is going to be entity framework. So we have three different database technologies, it is packed in one unit. Now, in the last semester or when you studied J2EE, you had something called JDBC. That's the only way in which you can connect to a database using Java. When it comes to ASP.NET or in general .NET, you have a variety of technologies which are in the order which I said is the in which it was created. Okay, ADO.NET was the first ever database technology from .NET in order to connect to databases, which was given. Second, after that, they came up with another idea called language integrated query. And right now, the current scenario is entirely based on something called entity framework, which is built on top of all these things. So it's right that we start with ADO.NET, then we move to Link, language integrated query, then we go to entity framework. So the plan is like this, guys. In this next week, we will try to cover ADO.NET theory first, and then as soon as we finish the theory, we will take up a CRUD operation using the technologies what we had discussed in the previous class. So it will go like this. So please do try to be on in the class on time. Okay, and try to follow these classes. These are very important, guys. The reason why I'm saying these are very important, this third unit is very important, is because number one, almost all your lab programs will be based on this, because database is compulsory. And second thing is that your exams will be based on database connections. Okay, and the third thing is that the most important feature of a server-side technology. Okay, we have discussed this in detail in while we studied with Java. Okay, the thing is, most of the time, why do we require a server-side technology? If HTML, JavaScript, CSS can handle so much of things, why do I even need a server-side technology? Okay, 90% of the answer would be databases, because you cannot connect it to a physical database or a database which is existing in the server using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML, CSS, JavaScript are entirely meant for client side. On the server side, there are few things which makes you choose server side technology. Number one is database. Number two is the date and time, if you remember all these things. Okay, date and time manipulation. Third one is file handling. Okay, like that, lot of things are there, but the majority of the chunk is taken by databases, which means most of the time we use a server-side technology like PHP, ASP, JSP, okay, or Cold Fusion, or whatever you have chosen is based because we cannot directly manipulate databases. We use these server-side scripting or programming languages. Now, in .NET, in ASP.NET, what we have seen so far is web forms, how to create forms, how to put controls, how to make them manipulated with data. But please note, all those things can be done even without server-side technology, which means without much of programming. Whatever C# can do till now can also be done by JavaScript. It is not compulsory for you to use C# till now, what we have seen. But now, any more proceeding forward, okay, while we use a server-side technology, we need to know how to handle, how to access, how to create, update, delete data from the database using a particular technology. Now, what we are going to discuss today is a what do you call a similar one compared to what we have learned in JDBC. Okay, how we had learned JDBC is like we have taken some steps and we created a connection, and then we had a statement, and then we had a result set. Okay, or maybe we just put the data or insert or execute, update or execute query, like that. We had a lot of things. Okay, that is J2EE, or in other words JDBC. We just use Java to connect to databases, Java database connectivity, that we had kept separately. In this class also, in this section of ASP.NET, where we are going to connect to a database using one of the technology called ADO.NET. So let me quickly finish what is ADO.NET and why is it required and how it works, all those things. Okay, so what we are going to see in this today's class is that what is ADO.NET, what is its architecture, what are the important namespaces. I hope I need not explain what are namespaces anymore to you guys. You should be aware of that. Next, we are going to see, unlike JDBC, here there are two types of architecture. JDBC has only one, but ADO.NET has two types of architecture. Please note the names: connected and disconnected. Okay, we are going to see what are the connected classes and what are disconnected classes. Two keywords inside ADO.NET. Please remember that. Now, before we proceed further, I want you to picturize two things, two different things for to understand what is connected and disconnected. Okay, I'll give a little bit more detail on that later, but let's just take two scenarios. One, the first scenario where we traditionally used computers. Okay, this is nothing to do with databases, guys. I'm just giving an example, then we'll correlate it with the database what we are learning. Okay, just think of a desktop PC. Okay, I'm just telling, in case of our evolution, we had desktop PC. Okay, what is a desktop PC and what is a laptop PC? Like, both are PCs, both have Windows or Linux or Mac, whatever is some operating system is there. Both are somewhat similar. Okay, because we get the work done in both, that's all. But there are basic difference in the hardware, isn't it? Okay, so let's come across them. When it comes to a desktop PC and a laptop PC, just think about this. Okay, what is the disadvantage, or what is the limitations of a desktop PC? Okay, before that, let's understand how a desktop PC works. Number one, you need a constant supply of power. One. Okay, and then it needs to be connected to a motherboard, which, I mean, an SMPS, which powers, supplies power throughout motherboard or wherever it is required, hard disk, or wherever it is required. It goes like that. Okay, in other words, if the current goes, PC will switch off. That's all. Okay, if in case if you have an UPS, it might not, but otherwise, normally when you connect a desktop PC to your power supply, if current goes, your system will turn off without giving a warning to you, because it will not wait. As soon as the connection or the supply gets stopped, your PC gets turned off. Simple as that. Okay, so that is considered as a connected architecture. Okay, the architecture of a PC, a desktop PC, is connected. When it comes to your laptop, it is not the case. The laptop has something called a battery, in which the power supply is stored temporarily for 2 to 3 hours or something like that. After that, that will also get shut down. But then please understand, the difference is that it does not shut down as soon as you switch off the power supply. After the power supply is gone also, there is a backup in which power is kept, so that your system keeps running. Okay, but it cannot run for a long time. It has its own limitations. Again, you will need to go back to the power supply at one point or the other, just like how your mobile phone works or a laptop works. Simple idea. Okay, remember these two scenarios, guys. With that, we will be coming into the picture of connected and disconnected databases. So when it comes to a laptop, it's much easier to understand how a laptop works or a mobile phone works. Okay, so first thing we need, in case of a laptop or a desktop, it doesn't matter whether you have a laptop or a desktop. Basically, for both you require current. You need power supply, in other words. Okay, so when the supply of power is given, how a laptop takes it, how a desktop takes it, that's all I want you to understand here in order to understand these two architectures. Okay, so when it comes to power supply, both require power supply. I hope you need to understand this, or you've got this idea. Whether it is a laptop or whether it is a desktop, power supply is a must. You cannot carry around your laptop forever without connecting it to a power supply, which means it is also dependent, but it is not like completely dependent. Okay, it can work independent of the power supply, but either way, desktop PC, laptop PC, both require power supply. Let's be very clear on that word, power supply. Now, when it comes to databases, I'll not use the word power supply. Okay, instead of that, I'll use the word connection, data connection. Okay, I need connection to the database. That's all. It doesn't matter whether it is connected architecture or disconnected architecture. I require connection to the database. Number one, remember the keywords. I'm going to repeat that once again in the slides throughout. Okay, so first one, connection. Now, secondary, when it comes to let's say a laptop, what happens? Okay, there is a power supply, which means there is a socket, and there is a laptop. Okay, in between that power supply and the socket, you cannot directly take a plug and put it into your laptop. Okay, there is something in the middle which converts that voltage, which comes like 220 to 240 volt, which comes from your power socket. But your laptop doesn't require 220 watts. It might require 20 to 25 watts, not more than that. Okay, so which means there should be somebody who converts, okay, I'm using another word, adapts that current. Okay, that's why we call it as an adapter. Most of us, we call it as charger. Okay, but the technical word is an adapter. What does it do? It adapts that current which comes from 220 watts. Your phone chargers, same thing. Okay, but they are technically called as adapters. The reason is it converts that the full current which comes 220 watts or 240 watts into your 15 or 20, or depending on what wattage is required in your phone or laptop. Okay, that is something called as an adapter. Okay, I wanted to understand this, guys. The first keyword what I used is connection or power supply or supply of power. In databases we can call supply of data. Where is the supply of data coming from? Database. All right, so that is in order to connect to that, connection, first one. Second one is the charger. Okay, let's not use the word charger, let's use the word adapter. So we have an adapter in between, and then please remember this, in your laptop when I connect your adapter, which part gets charged up? Okay, remember that it's the battery which gets charged up, not your laptop. Only the battery gets charged up. Okay, and then the supply is taken from the or the motherboard works from that battery's charge. If I remove the battery and only give connection, it becomes a connected architecture, which means it is not storing anywhere. It is directly giving the current to your motherboard, which means it can start working without the battery there. So what is that battery doing? It is storing that supply temporarily for me. Okay, it stores it temporarily for me so that I can access it even without the power connection directly given to me. So that place, I can say that it is a collection of charge which is stored there. In databases, I can say it's a collection or it's a set of data which is stored there. Okay, remember those words I've told. Three keywords I've used so far. Number one is connection. Number two is the adapter. Number three is the set of power, or the collection of power. In other words, in databases, we can use collection of data or set of data. In short form, we can call it as data set. Okay, so I've used three keywords: connection, adapter, data set. All right, remember that. That's very important. All these words you can put with the word data. Data connection, data adapter, data set. I hope you remember these. Okay, this is for a laptop. What about a desktop? Okay, a desktop requires, it doesn't have a battery. It's very simple. It doesn't have a battery. You have a power supply, which is connection, data connection, and then directly you connect it to your PC. Okay, you'll have it to your SMPS. Okay, but still you directly connect it to your SMPS or PC. Okay, your CPU. All right, it is there, that the big one which is with have a fan and all outside, that is the SMPS. So you directly connect it there and your PC is powered up. Okay, this part where that connection comes and then directly goes to your what do you call the CPU. Okay, that particular part. Now I have connection. I've connected it. The wire is come. It doesn't mean that it will start working. You'll have to turn it on. Once you turn it on, the supply comes. Okay, please understand that the supply comes, and in other words, once the power supply starts going to your desktop, it is a command given to the machine to start. Okay, please remember the word, the keyword here I want you to remember here is to command. Okay, the moment you turn on the power supply, a command is issued to your SMPS that the power supply has come. That's why you see a light there, and then you go and turn it on. The turn on and off is taken care by the motherboard. Okay, but anyway, basic thing what I want you to understand is that the supply, once it hits the SMPS of your machine, it remembers or it gets a command saying that you can work, you can start working. That's a command. Okay, and please remember, in laptop it is all combined. Your screen is combined, your keyboard, everything is in one shot, so you can get everything there. But when it comes to a desktop, if I don't have a monitor, okay, if I don't have a monitor, there is no point of having a wonderful CPU because you can't see anything. All right, in case you wanted to just do a performance or just want to do something with the, or just want to turn on your machine, then it is fine. But if you want to read something, if you want to see what is happening, if you want to play something on the CPU, you need a separate thing called as a what do you call, a monitor. Okay, let me say that if the monitor is there where you see and read stuff. Okay, so the keyword here is reader. All right, again, I've used three keywords when it comes to desktop. One is connection, obviously. Second one is the command issued. Third one is the reader. Okay, guys, you should understand that all these three are very, very, very important. Okay, so I've given these keywords. Now let's jump into the code of, or the technical part of ADO.NET. Okay, ADO.NET. What is ADO.NET? It is a collection of classes, interfaces, structures, and enumerated types. It's a collection, okay, of everything possible in programming. That what does it do? I'm not going to go in detail of all these things. What are the classes, what are the interfaces, everything we are not going to see, but rather it just think that it is a collection of class, interface, structure, enumeration, everything together. What does it do? This collection manages data access from RDBMS. In other words, your relational databases within the .NET framework. Now, you need to understand one more thing, that while we work with J2EE, okay, or Java, database connectivity, please understand Java is the programming language, okay, and it can connect with MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Access, whatever database you have. Similarly, ADO.NET is one of the technology, okay, but basically the keyword here I'm wanting to look forward is .NET. Okay, so let it be ASP.NET, let it be just desktop application, let it be a mobile application, doesn't matter. Our ADO.NET is a technology by which you access data from RDBMS. I have not told which RDBMS. Okay, it can be any RDBMS like Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Oracle. Okay, whatever it is. If it is an RDBMS, it can connect to your .NET framework. Within the .NET framework, you can access that RDBMS using this collection called ADO.NET. I hope this correlation is clear. All right, let's move on. Being part of the .NET framework, ADO.NET was built with the new world of XML. All right, now it's not so new, but still, it's the world of XML nowadays, guys. You should understand that, very important. You would have seen in Android, not only in Android, anything you develop anymore, okay, XML will be at its core. Okay, we had a very good example with respect to Android. You saw that the entire design and the configuration, the manifest, everything is given to XML. All right, so mostly XML centric technologies are what coming up. Let's say Swift, if you're developing iOS applications, if you're using, let's say, Swift or Cordova, or the recent one from Flutter, whichever you are using, XML becomes a part. Okay, it's the world important. It's a more important technology than anything. Earlier, it was not much concerned about, but right now it becomes a medium or an access medium for all of them who would like to exchange or interchange of data. Okay, so it's the new world of XML, disconnected data, web and HTTP in mind. All these things part of it, ADO.NET was built. And just remember, before .NET framework, okay, before .NET framework could come into picture, there was something called ASP. I've mentioned this while we started with ASP.NET. There was something called ASP. What technology did ASP use to connect to database? It was called ADO. I hope you can get the correlation. ASP used ADO, just ADO. Okay, by the way, after saying so much, what is ADO? ActiveX Data Objects. Okay, please note the full form. It's ActiveX, one word, ActiveX Data Object. All right, basically data objects, that's all. But ActiveX is a keyword of Microsoft. Okay, you would have come across this in old Internet Explorer browsers, ActiveX enabled, disable, all those things. But now it's not much, but it is just namesake kept there. The name has not been changed. We are not going to use ActiveX directly. Do not worry about it. It's just a name. The full form is ActiveX Data Objects. It is a rewrite of ADO for the .NET framework, which means ASP was there. For ASP, they used ADO. Now we have ASP.NET. What we are going to use now is ADO.NET. I hope you get this. ADO is an old technology. ADO.NET is the new technology. All right. It is a natural evolution of ADO built around entire development. Okay. Before I proceed, if you remember in J2EE, we had discussed single tier, 2 tier, 3 tier, 4 tier, and then we went to N tier architecture. Okay. So ADO.NET is around N tier architecture, which means any number of tiers. You can divide it as design, logic, okay, database. You can split it however you want. It's entirely restructurable. Okay, it's in your hands. All right, and it is with XML at its core. Remember that. That's very important. This is the architecture diagram of ADO.NET, guys. It's easy to understand if you have understood what is connected and disconnected. Now I'm going to bring about the keywords what I discussed now before we started this slide. Okay, so I wanted to just start with at the bottom here. Okay, this is what we are targeting towards. We are targeting to get data, okay, using ADO.NET. This is the architecture of ADO.NET. Our target is to read and write into databases. Which database? Not mentioned. Any database. It can be Microsoft SQL, Oracle, MySQL, whichever it is. Okay, that is the architecture. I mean, this is the one our target is here. All right. On top of that, okay, the first thing, this is the data provider and all those things you can ignore. Just look at the keywords. Okay, number one, connection. Okay, this is something which is common. It doesn't matter which one you're using. Connection. All right, so it's very, very important. One. Second, sorry, command. All right, the keywords what I had used, just remember them: connection, command, reader. This part of the architecture is called connected architecture. Why? Because the moment connection goes, no command will be issued, nothing to be read. I hope you follow this. All right, this is like your desktop PC. Let's say this is the power supply and this is the command which is issued to your SMPS that the power supply is working, and then with that you can read on your monitor what is happening. These three things, and the reader will take the data from the database, and it goes on like this. Okay, now imagine the connection gets stopped. The moment you stop your connection, command will be null. Data reader cannot read anything because the connection is closed. Once the connection is closed, everything is closed. That is connected architecture. Very simple. What about disconnected architecture? Connection, obviously it's important. Connection to the adapter is required. Ignore the ones which are there in inside the box. Just focus on the keywords, guys. Then we'll see the box ones. Okay, so here, data adapter. What is the work of an adapter? Just think about it. Okay, imagine in your hands you have a laptop and you have a charger. Okay, your laptop might work without power supply. Your charger is useless without the power supply. I hope you get this. Okay, just think about it. Your charger, the laptop charger what you have is useless without the current, without the power supply. If the power supply is there, your charger will work, and once the power supply stops, your charger also stops working. The only thing which continues after you stop your supply is the laptop, because laptop has something like called battery. Okay, so here you have data adapter, and data adapter comes inside the connected architecture. Reason is your adapter is also pretty much useless if there is no connection. That's why it's kept on this side, this box. These are all connected architecture. Okay, what about disconnected architecture? In that case, you need supply, you need an adapter. Please note, even though adapter belongs to the connected architecture, it works for the disconnected architecture. What is disconnected architecture? Set of data which is stored temporarily in a different place. Do not think this is what do you call one second. Yeah, this do not take this part as let's say like a battery, but rather it's just a temporary copy of the database stored in a different format. Which format? XML. That's why disconnected architecture is working. We will discuss more about that, but for this particular diagram I want you to remember the keywords what I have discussed. Connected architecture takes three keywords, very important three keywords: connection, command, data reader. Three keywords. Remember that. What about disconnected architecture? Again, connection, adapter, dataset. I hope you guys can understand this. Okay. With this, we will proceed, and I'll come back to the diagram. Whatever is written inside, we'll see later. Okay. These are the keywords what I said. All those are classes. If all those are classes, what we are going to use is basically objects. Okay, with this, let's go to the next part. Namespaces. What are namespaces? Just think that if you are using in JDBC, if you wanted to use SQL based or JDBC based this ones, you will have to import certain things. Import java.sql.star. Okay, that's the namespace. In Java, we call it as packages. Here we call them as namespaces. The important namespaces which are required for our working is system.data, system.data.common, system.data.ole, OLEDB. That is object linking and embedding. That's one of the technologies. It's a very old one. We won't be using that. Okay, if you want to connect to different databases, we'll be using it. But please note, always Microsoft will promote or support Microsoft SQL Server with ASP.NET. I hope you follow, guys. it is your choice to choose what database you want to use. You can use MySQL, you can use Oracle, you can use Microsoft SQL, but Microsoft's technologies will always endorse Microsoft technologies. In other words, when you are using ASP.NET, obviously they will tell please use Microsoft SQL because both are same company. Just like how Java always pushes Oracle towards us, or its own databases. But please note, majority of the databases belong to the same company, Oracle. MySQL also belongs to Oracle. The one which we used, JavaDB, Derby, also belongs to the same company. Okay, so they have a variety of choices, but they will obviously push MySQL or Oracle to you, not Microsoft SQL. It doesn't mean you cannot connect. You can connect, but the idea is that if you are working with a particular technology like ASP.NET, it's always preferred to work with Microsoft based technologies because the working will be much better and simpler, like PHP, MySQL. Okay, doesn't mean that PHP cannot connect with any other databases. It can, but they prefer that they have a glue, or they have that kind of an understanding or a connection that it works better with MySQL, with PHP. Here it works better with Microsoft SQL. Okay, so that is why I'm showing all these namespaces. We'll use them one by one when it is required. Okay, now connected and disconnected data. ADO.NET supports two different programming environments. That's what I was discussing so far. One is connected. There are different keywords inside connected architecture. I have discussed only three, but please note what are the remaining ones. Connection, as I told, command, data reader, all those three are the major ones. And if you remember the diagram, inside those big words, there were small words also. So I'm going to tell those small words. Number one, parameter. Number two, transaction. Number three, data adapter. Please note, adapter belongs to connected architecture, but it works for disconnected architecture. I hope you can get the flow. All right, just look at that. Disconnected architecture starts with something called data set. Okay, what is data set? Data set, just imagine data set like a battery. What does the battery do? It stores the charge or the power temporarily. Okay, so imagine if instead of the power, I'm giving you a database. What will you store temporarily? Table. Okay, temporarily you will store a data table. Where will you store the table? Inside the data set. Okay, what does the table have? Table has rows and columns. Table, data column, data row. And what are those table rows and columns bound with? Constraints. They have constraints. You know what's a constraint, right? Like primary key, integer, varchar, 200 characters, 50 characters. Those are all constraints what we put on a particular database. And then relation between the tables. That's also view. If you just think about after that word data set, whatever you see below, all those words are just a representation or a copy of your actual database into XML. Okay, I'll show all these things in working, guys, but just please remember the keywords what are involved here. All these keywords are important and you will be asked questions upon this. Okay, so please do remember all these keywords. Let me repeat it once again. Connected architecture, keywords are connection, command and data reader. And then inside that, parameters are given to every command which you issue. Transaction can never happen on a disconnected architecture. It has to be on a connected architecture. Okay, just think about this. When you're imagine that in your laptop you are trying to install Windows. Okay, those who have done will understand this. Okay, when you are trying to install Windows, or let's say your phone. Okay, in your phone, while a new update comes to your phone, just think about this. Imagine your phone's battery is around 20 or 25%. Update will not happen if you think about that. Okay, just understand what is happening in your phones. Almost all of you would have had this issue. When you are trying to update your phone should have minimum this much amount of battery, or you should connect it to the power supply. Otherwise, it will not update. Have you noticed that? That's because you don't want to lose, or you don't want to corrupt the system. Okay, similarly here in databases also, you cannot use transaction. When do you bring in a transaction? When money based things are involved. Okay, when money based things are involved, you should normally keep it real time. You cannot keep a copy and then work on it. Okay, it should be real time, which means if two people are working on the same account at the same time, all right, one should be locked, deadlock, and all those things you would have come across this in database. I'm not going to explain much about it, but please remember, transactions can be only happening in a connected environment, not in a disconnected environment, which means on a laptop which has less charge, you cannot do an update. On a phone also. Okay, it's always recommended that it's connected while you do a transaction or when you do something which is sensitive. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. Let's see about the examples later. Disconnected architecture, one important keyword is there, data set. Set of data stored in a particular location. Now, how will I keep a backup? I cannot create one more copy of a database as the database itself. So, database will be converted into an XML file and then it will be stored as a temporary value in data set. Okay, in that data set, what and all will be there? There'll be data table, there'll be columns, there'll be rows, there'll be relations, there'll be constraints, there'll be a data view. Just like how a database is there. We can recreate everything in a disconnected architecture in XML format also. Okay, these are the two programming environments available in ADO.NET. Now, little bit in depth about connected databases. Okay, connected environment provides, please understand this word, this is important guys. Okay, it provides forward only, read only access in the data source and the ability to execute commands against the data source. Okay, in other words, it is forward only, read only. Fast access is available to the data source and it also has the ability to execute commands against the data source also. Okay, you can use it for retrieving, or in other words, you can use the connection for a connected database for retrieval, insert, update, delete, anything, any particular operation you want to perform. Okay, they provide a common way to work with connected data regardless of what is the data source. Okay, data source in the sense like let it be MySQL, Microsoft SQL, doesn't matter. They'll give you a common way of connecting to the databases. Okay, that's what is more important in a connected architecture. Then we will see that what are the classes required. This is just a diagram, only that particular thing focused on connection. Then you have a command. Okay, then you have transaction or a data reader, parameter, etc, etc. Okay, I've just put the names here, just a revision. Okay, connection class. The first important keyword, the very much important keyword here in connected architecture is connection class. What does the connection class have? Same thing we have used in JDBC, if you remember. Okay, how do you establish a connection? You create a connection, .get connection. Okay, you get the connection and you then ask something to happen. The first line, if you remember, after loading the driver, you establish connection. Okay, so how do I connect it? What does that connection object con? You remember con.open, con.close we used to write. That con is the object. So what is the class? Connection. I hope you can get the correlation here. What does that object or the class maintain? It maintains information required to connect to the data source through a connection string. Okay, this also we have come across in JDBC. If you remember, there is a line in the first line after loading the driver. Loading driver, what will you write? You will write com.jdbc.odbc.sun. You remember that one we wrote? Okay, com.derby.apache, something like that we had written. That was the driver name. But the second line, if you remember, we had copy pasted it from our NetBeans ID. If you remember that part where the username is there, password is there. Okay, the driver and the connection, the database is name, everything else will be there. That part, it maintains the information which is required to connect. What information is required? For example, if you're using Oracle or MySQL, what information is required? What is the port number? Those who have worked with PHP MySQL, again, in the DB config, what would you write? You will write what is the server name, you'll write localhost, right? And then you'll write what is the username, what is the password, what is the database name. All these things you will pass. These are information which are required to connect to the data source. Okay, that is all written in one line. That is called connection string. Okay, please remember that. It contains information such as name of the data. That's what I just told now. Authorization, credentials, setting, etc., will be stored in one line. It has also the connection. If you remember, we have already come across this. It has the methods to open and close connection. Con.open, con.close. You remember that? Same thing. It has the methods to open and close connection. Also, it has the methods for transactions to be committed or rolled back. You remember that? It is part of, it is, you can initialize a transaction using connection. Con.begin transaction. Those who remember this will be very easy for you to take it up in ADO.NET, but it's somewhat similar like JDBC only. So if you remember that, this will be easier. Con object has the way, or using a connection object only, you can create a transaction. So con.begin transaction. So that will come from here. Con connection class has the methods for transactions to be initiated on the connection. Also, contains other properties of the connection. We'll see that in detail when we do the program. Okay, second one, command class. Okay, as the word goes, what does the class do? It just issues commands. Okay, information submitted to a database as a query. Okay, that can be via a connection object. Obviously there should be connection. Without connection you cannot establish or you cannot execute an SQL statement. Just imagine if you open phpMyAdmin, first thing they ask you is give the username, give the password. Mostly it will be root and no password, but if you have given something, you'll give username and you'll password and log in. Once you log in, that connection should be established. Once the connection is established or connected, then you can start executing queries. You would have done that in the lab, in the Oracle lab, if you remember. Okay, you open a command prompt, you cannot directly start writing select star from table name. Rather than that, what would you do? You would first try to connect. You'll use your register number and the password, and then once it says connected, then you'll start executing the commands. Similarly, command is something which can be executed or it's like something which I'm asking or telling the database to do via a connection object. Without the connection, you cannot, without establishing the connection, you cannot issue a command. Okay, remember that. In other words, without the power, you cannot give power supply. All right, it executes SQL statements on store procedure against the data source. Okay, command means SQL command. Just imagine it as SQL command. If you pass select star from table name or insert into table or update table or whatever you want to write, that command will be executed. And while you're inserting, you can also pass parameters. Like we have done that with prepared statement, if you remember. Okay, the statement which you had in JDBC can be correlated with command here in area.net. Okay, that's what, same thing. I'm repeating it again. Okay, so there are two things. Please note, returns result set. What we had in JDBC was result set. Okay, but result set was always connected. If you close the connection, result set is useless. Okay, just like that here, if you close the connection, the command is useless. All right, so data reader object, data set object via a data adapter. Okay, I'll talk about this in the program itself. Remember that command is just nothing but SQL commands. While you pass commands, you can also pass parameters through those commands. Parameterized query or stored procedure. Okay, prepared statement. We used to put question marks and keep. Then we used to replace that question mark with some value. Here we'll use a different mechanism. I'll show that in the next class. Okay, it is also accessed within the command object. That's what I just told. We'll move on fast. Okay, transaction. I guess everybody knows what's a transaction. A transaction should be used when there's a group of operation to be done, but it should be working as one operation. Like for example, cash coming out of an ATM. That I think that's what you'll be seeing, that cash coming out of the ATM and amount debiting from your account must be happening at the same time. Okay, let's say online transaction. If you're booking a ticket or if you're recharging your mobile phone. Okay, the amount which is debited or removed from your bank account and put into your mobile balance account, that both should happen. These are two different operations, but it is called as one transaction. Okay, it's a group of operations combined into one logical unit of work, either guaranteed to be executed as a whole or rolled back, and making sure that it has not happened at all. Okay, which means if I'm initiating a mobile recharge request, until my mobile recharge is completed, which means my mobile balance has been updated, it is one transaction. If amount from my bank is gone but my phone has not been recharged, then that amount should come back to me, rolled back. Okay, transaction. So you already know what is the properties of transaction. I'm not going to explain much. Asset properties, atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, etc. Same thing is applicable here. It is an indispensable part of ADO.NET. Not only just ADO.NET, any database transaction or any databases you come across, transaction processing is a vital, an indispensable part. Okay, and I guess you understood this part. Let me just continue. Data reader, forward only, read only access to the data source. Okay, please note, as the name goes, a reader is supposed to only give read only access. You cannot write using a reader. That I think is basic English for you. All right, so forward only, read only access, data reader. Remember that. It is optimized for speed. Okay, because it is not performing any transaction. It is optimized for speed because it can read stuff faster. That's all. Okay, it is instantiated using command object. Please understand that. Okay, so just like how we had connection between every line we wrote in JDBC, here also reader is initialized using command. The command is or initialized using the connection object. So these three are connected together. Okay, so that I'll show it in working. Adapter. Now please note, when you're talking about disconnected architecture, we need three keywords again: connection, adapter. These two belong to the connected classes, but they work for disconnected architecture. I'll show that in code. So please remember these keywords and keep. Okay. What is a data adapter? It provides a set of methods and properties to retrieve and save data between a data set and its source. What is your charger? Just take your laptop adapter and see, it has 2 points. One goes into the power supply, one goes into your laptop. Like that. Here it is a laptop, in the sense it charges the battery, right? So here it is a connection between data set, that is your battery, and its source of data. In your battery source is power supply. Okay, so those two things. It's a set of, it's to retrieve and save data between these two entities. Okay, it allows the use of stored procedures. It connects to the database and fills the data set, also updates the database. I want you to remember this statement, guys. I'll be asking it in MCQ. I'll be asking it once again to you when we are doing the program. Remember this, it's very, very important. When you connect an adapter, okay, not like physical adapter, I'm talking about the database adapter here, it does two things. Okay, it connects to the database to fill the data set, also update the database. Remember these two keywords, very, very important. While you're working with disconnected architecture, if I fill the data set, it does two operations. Number one, it fills, also it updates the database. Okay, remember this. I'll give you with examples, but please do highlight and keep it if you're taking note. Okay, it bridges between data source and the disconnected data set. Okay, that I'll show you. It wraps the connected classes to provide this functionality. Okay, because it is there, it belongs to the connected class, but it works for the disconnected classes. So what are disconnected classes? It allows you to retrieve data from data source and manipulated, later reconciled with the data source. I hope you can understand that. Okay. Now I charge my laptop, I take it and go on the way to use. Let's say, for example, I'm traveling from here to Mangalore. I charge my laptop, and on the way to Mangalore, I can use my laptop. Okay, till that temporarily I can use, which means I can right now be manipulating that power and I can later reuse that. That's all. Okay, similarly, when it comes to a database, instead of all the time requesting data, let me give you a simple example. Let's say that we have 10th results. Okay, if instead of using connected architecture like PHP or Java or anything like that, if we use ASP.NET, there will not be any lag, there will not be any delay. The reason is, the moment the data comes, please note, the data is not going to change immediately. Like, so for example, your 10th results are not like getting updated every minute. Once it is issued, it is issued. Okay, 10th or plus 2, whatever results it is, just imagine like that. Once it is issued, the data is not going to change immediately. I cannot say that same thing with respect to a railway timetable, because it keeps changing immediately, right? So when it comes to a result, I can use ADO.NET, disconnected architecture, which means the very first time you retrieve data from the database, that time I'll take a copy, store it in XML. Okay, please note, why is XML much faster? XML is a text-based file. It will bypass all your firewalls and go. But when it comes to direct access to a database, you need to give username, you need to give password, you need to maximum security should be given before you open that particular database. But when it comes to XML, you don't have that problem. Once XML is there, n number of people can access at the same time, but it still be fast enough. I'll show you why in the next class. Remember that. Okay, so it is later reconciled with the data source. It provides a common way to work with disconnected data regardless of the underlying data source. You can use Oracle or MySQL or Microsoft SQL, whatever it is. I take the data from them, convert them into XML. Once I make them XML, I don't care which database you have used, whether you have used Oracle or MySQL or Microsoft SQL, it doesn't matter to me. Data set is same. It doesn't matter which data source you are using. Okay. So what are the data set available? Data set is the keyword I wanted to remember. Everything else is optional, because once you understand what is a data set, basically a data set is nothing but a table, a copy of a table. Okay, not only one table, it can have, like for example, one database can have n number of tables, right? So here, if one data set is there, it can have n number of data tables. And what can tables have? It can have n number of rows and columns. Similarly, that same word is put, data column, data row. And every data which you store there should follow some constraints. Okay, like primary key, foreign key, all those constraints will be there. So that is also there. Then data relation. Please understand that every table, if you have more than one table and you have connection between them or relation between them, that also must be stored. Please understand one important thing here. They only exist in the RAM. Data table, this logical table, it's a logical table, it's not a physical table. They exist in the RAM and do not correlate to 1:1 data structures. They are all logical, which means, for example, the first time the person loads, it's stored in the RAM of my server. Next time the user accesses it, it directly accesses from the RAM and gives it to you. It doesn't go to the database once again to retrieve the data. That is where we store or we use data set in or disconnected architecture for a larger extent. Okay, remember this part. I am going to skip this part because I've already told you much about data set. Okay, it's a cache of data that contains tables, columns, relationships, constraints, just like a database. Okay, regardless of where the data comes from, it can all be placed into a data set. That's very important. Okay, it tracks the changes that are made and it holds before it updates the source data. Remember, I told you two things can be done at the data set. When you fill the data set, number one, it fills the data with the current whatever is available from the database. Second thing, it also updates the database. Remember that. Okay. Data set is fully XML featured. Remember that. Okay. And it supports all models: flat, relational, hierarchical. That's what I said. It doesn't care what data source is it. Whatever data source you give me, I'll store it, I'll convert it into XML and store it as a data set. I'll show that in practicality tomorrow. Okay, it's an essentially in-memory relational database serving as a container for all those things what we have mentioned earlier. Okay, it is an in-memory relational database. What do you mean by in-memory? Not stored on your hard disk, rather it is stored in the RAM. It will be accessed much faster than your physical storage. What is a data table? It is nothing but a representation. It's a representation, which means a data set is like a box or a database. Okay, table, just like how we correlate a table to a database, same way here. One database can have n number of tables. So one data set can contain n number of data tables, as simple as that. Okay, it allows data to be stored in rows and columns, collection of rows and columns, same thing. All right, and define the schema of the table. You must create and add all those things. This is all automatically done, guys. Don't worry about that. Data table, and each table has columns and its rows. Okay, the same thing is repeated again. Column corresponds to a column in the table, and data table represents to a database which is there in your physical database. It's just a copy. That's all. Okay, it stores metadata, it stores a structure. Okay, together with the constraints, it defines the schema of your table. And all right, so same thing for row also. All right, what is a constraint? Now, constraints are available in all databases, right? Okay, so that in every database you have constraints. Here also we have constraints which are enforced in as part of your data table here. Okay, every table value which you create must have constraints applied to it, so it will be there. It's an automatic rule. That's important for you to understand. It's an automatic rule applied to a column or related columns that determines the course of action. Okay, remember that. And it's not important for you to understand this, guys, because we are not going to use much. We are just practically going to use it in XML. I'm just telling what is stored in that XML file. Okay, they are enforced with enforced constraint property of the data set. Okay, these all are automatically done, but I'm just explaining the interior working. That's all. Okay, and the important constraints here are foreign key and unique key. All right, so foreign and unique constraints, that I think you already know what is foreign constraint, what foreign key constraint, and what is a unique constraint. So I'm not going to explain this much. Okay, relations. The data relation between two or more data table objects. Okay, in other words, two or more tables. How do you relate them? Using relationship where there are parent and child types, or data type for both the columns must be identical, like ID which is stored in this, and it should be the same which is there in the main ID, like that. Okay, I think you know how two tables are connected to each other. Okay, they can also be cascaded, like on delete, on update. same as RDBMS, guys. That's why I'm not repeating it much, because I think you have already been given a big revision of database and DBMS related stuff. So let me not get into much of this. Okay. So let's see how to do it using ADA.NET. That's all. All right. So let me just skip this relation part. Sorry. All right. What is a data view? Okay, in SQL, in every SQL database, what you have come across, this view will be there. Creating a view instead of collecting data on runtime, you can also create a view and keep, so that you can, like for example, you can pick up whatever data you want from different tables and show them as one table for your convenience or for your easiness. Okay, that's something called view, which is stored in your database itself. Okay, same thing is available in XML also as data view. Okay, once retrieved into a data set or data table to be viewed in different ways. Same. What's the idea of data view in database? Same thing here in data view. Only thing is it is in XML. That's all. Okay, so let me just stop with this. If you have any questions, please do ask.